Good afternoon and welcome to this press conference. As you know, the Committee of Inquiry to investigate the use of Pegasus and equivalent surveillance spyware approved yesterday its final report as well as its recommendations for action. These recommendations will now be tabled for a plenary vote, scheduled for the June plenary session. We have here today the chair of the committee, Mr. Jeroen LENAERS, and the rapporteur, Ms. Sophie IN T VELD, who will briefly present you the outcome of their one-year investigation and reply to any questions you may have. We do have interpretation in English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, and Polish, and we also have journalists connecting remotely who will have the opportunity to ask questions too. Mr. LENAERS, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome all. As you will have seen, we did indeed have the votes yesterday in the PEGA committee on the final report and the recommendations. I would like to first really express my gratitude to all the vice chairs, the rapporteur, the shadow rapporteurs, all the coordinators, all the staff and advisors, also from the PEGA secretariat, the interpreters, the technical teams who made our work possible over the past 14 months. It's been a hectic 14 months, and without all the support, we would never have been able to manage what we managed in the end. So I just wanted to start with that, because we were established by a plenary decision in March 2022. We have been active since April the 19th of 2022, which was our constitutive meeting. And in the meantime, we have organized about 40 meetings, including, in addition also to missions to Israel, to Poland, to Hungary, to Greece, to Cyprus, and to Spain. And we engaged with well over 200 interlocutors in the past 14 months, which is a very impressive number. Now, yesterday we had the votes on the report and on the recommendation. Both were adopted with a huge majority, 30 out of 37 votes in favour, which is more than 80% majority on both the recommendation and the report, with only the colleagues from the ECR, the ID group, and non-inscrits not supporting the report and the recommendations. The report is the final report as it was adopted in the committee, and that will be also its final version. The recommendations we will present to the plenary in June. There will be debates and votes on the recommendation, and then we expect the European Commission to respond without delay to all the recommendations that we have made together. On the content, and I will leave to the rapporteur, Sophie IN T VELD, to present the main findings of the report and the recommendations. I just wanted to underline once more that we've started this work over a year ago, very much from the perspective of the victims of the abuse of very invasive spyware that can take over your phone completely. And we know we live in a time where our whole lives are in our phones, so it's basically taking over your whole lives. In an ideal situation, I would have to say, our committee would have never existed. In an ideal situation, there would be no abuse of spyware within the European Union, and where such abuse were to take place, it would be counteracted by the European Commission and the Council with vigor. We have to conclude, unfortunately, this was not the case, and it does show that our committee definitely was necessary. And even though we experienced a lack of cooperation from the member states in general and also from the other European institutions, we were lucky that we could rely on the support of many, many others. Investigative journalists, without whom we would still be in the dark about many of the issues that we address in the report, civil society, academics, tech experts, all those people who have supported and helped us over the past year, we are very grateful to, and I think it has led to a very impressive report. Now, the mandate of our committee comes to an end now, but our work is far from over. And I will count on this Parliament and all those who have been so active in our committee in the past 14 months to continue our work, based on the recommendations that we do, to make sure that the recommendations that the plenary of this Parliament will adopt next month will be more than just a wish list from the European Parliament, but it will actually make a difference in practice, that it will make a difference, it will mean something in practice, so we can make sure that abuse of spyware against European citizens will disappear from the European Union in the future. Thank you very much for your attention, and I happily pass the floor to our rapporteur, Sophie IN T VELD, who will read out all 240 pages of the report and the recommendations.
In all languages. No, thank you very much. I'll be very brief and leave sufficient time for the Q&A. Just a couple of remarks. We embarked on this road a year ago, 14 months ago. But let's not forget that it was the Pegasus project that brought to light the massive abuse of spyware already in July 2021, almost 2 years ago. Jeroen rightfully said that we focused very much on the victims, or let's say the targets of illegitimate spying. And we have to realize that they were chosen not at random. We are looking here not just at the problem of the individual privacy being violated. We are talking about people who have been targeted very deliberately because, for political reasons. They may have been critical journalists, they may have been lawyers, activists, even public officials who were very independently doing their job and trying to bring to light wrongdoing. These people were targeted. And then you have to ask yourself, why were they targeted? They were targeted by, let's say, the powers that be, by government parties who wanted to secure their own power position, or who were trying to cover up other wrongdoing, corruption, what have you. So it's not just about the damage done to individuals, it's about the damage done to democracy and to the rule of law. Because let's face it, if there is no more public scrutiny, if there is no dissent, opposition, criticism, then there's no democracy. It's that simple. So those forces who are abusing spyware, whether it's in the European Union or outside the European Union, because make no mistake about it, it's not as if we have outside the European Union there terrible autocratic governments or even dictatorships abusing spyware, and within the European Union it was just accidentally abused. No, they have the same purpose. It is a tool for power. And it is a tool against democracy. And this has been very much on my mind, and it became more and more clear as we were progressing with this work. Now, I reminded you of the Pegasus project, and when this all was brought to light almost 2 years ago, what has happened since? I think the European Parliament is probably the only parliament that has done such an in-depth inquiry of the phenomenon. We have seen that in particular in the countries where there is, let's say, problematic use of spyware, that it was near to impossible for a parliamentary inquiry or a judicial inquiry or any other kind of scrutiny to be effectuated. We see countries where we see public officials leading independent bodies that are supposed to exercise oversight, and they are being obstructed, intimidated, harassed, verbally attacked, etc. Now, 2 years down the road, there's a big report now containing a lot of information, but there's still a lot more out there. We know that there is still a lot more that will surface. And the question is, what is it going to lead to? I know that we cannot force the European Commission, but I do think that the European Commission and the European Council have a moral duty here. They have an obligation to the citizens. I mean, we're talking about, for example, we have a democracy action plan for the European Union. That's fine and dandy. But if they let this pass, if they allow this to happen in the European Union, then they are complicit in the destruction of democracy. And that is why we will indeed, even if the inquiry itself has been concluded, we will stay on top of this issue, we will pursue, we will monitor, we will ask questions, we will continue to put the spotlight on it, and we will continue, and this for me is very important, to support the people who are out there in the member states who are diligently and very courageously, in many cases, investigating. We will be by their side, and we will not rest before justice is done. Thank you.
So now, Now, if there are questions in the room, please, I ask you to state your name and the media you're working for and who you are addressing the question to. Please.
Hello, my name is Tassos Christodoulou from CYBC Cyprus. Both of you, I don't have a problem. The question, does the committee has evidence of illegal use and export of spyware from Cyprus? Thank you.
Sorry. It's all been written down in great detail in the report. Do we have evidence? No, because none of the authorities are cooperating. But, you know, we are asking authorities which we believe may have engaged in illegal exports. So how keen are they to cooperate? This was the eternal dilemma. But there are more than sufficient indicators for, let's say, illicit exports taking place from Cyprus, from Greece, from Bulgaria, and possibly also from other countries. And the point is that, you know, people are saying to us, yeah, but you have no rock-solid proof. But the European Commission is the responsible authority for investigating, because the Commission is responsible for the enforcement, the correct and full application of EU law. So I find it unacceptable if I hear the European Commissioner say, we have no powers, there's nothing we can do. Yes, they can. And the Commission has written to the authorities of Cyprus and Greece and France and a few more, asking them for clarifications. And then, you know, they get a reply saying everything is fine here, nothing to see, just keep circulating. That's not good enough. There's evidence that predator spyware has been exported from Cyprus with a license issued by Greece to Sudan, where, you know, two parties which are now at war in Sudan. I would say that the Commission has every right, an obligation even, to investigate and to insist that it gets all the information.
Please, the sir behind.
Yes. My name is Papadimitriou, working for Deutsche Welle and the Greek press. Question for Ms. In Veld. As far as I remember, you were trying to get in touch with the Greek government, with officials in the Greek government. You were visiting Greece, trying to get some answers. So far, you don't have any official response. Is there any progress in that? Did you try again and last time perhaps to get in touch with the government?
Well, when we traveled to Greece, we met with the minister, and there have been other countries where they've been very friendly and forthcoming, and we've had meetings. But that's not the same as sharing actual and meaningful information. And it wasn't, although it was very pleasant, we didn't come for a courtesy visit. And if I see what is happening in Greece, I'm extremely worried. But let's also not forget, when we say the authorities, there's the government, but there are also other authorities. We have met on several occasions, for example, with the ADAE and the Data Protection Authority. And they are, let's say, they tell a different story than the government. So, you know, have we spoken to the authorities in that sense? Yes.
Well, maybe to add to that, because if you look at the year that we've had and the meetings and the visits that we've organized, there were some countries, mainly Poland and Hungary, where there was no contact with the government or official authorities whatsoever, only after many requests a message that they would not cooperate with our investigation whatsoever. With regards to Cyprus, Greece, and also Spain, we were received by the authorities, also at the ministerial level. We've organized meetings here in Brussels where, through remote participation, also high officials of the ministries participated. And indeed, in the case of Greece, we had a very long meeting with the responsible minister. Now, of course, as a committee, we have many questions, many relevant questions, and not all of those have been answered. But I do feel that there is a very big difference between how different member states responded to our requests of engagement. When we speak about the engagement of member states in general, we've sent 27 questionnaires out to 27 member states, and only a very, very few of them came back with relevant information. and some did not reply at all, including my own country, the Netherlands. So in that sense, speaking about engagement and participation of the member states in general, which I also said in my introduction, it's very disappointing, and it also means that we will have to continue our fight with a lot of energy in order to make the absolutely necessary changes in Europe.
Maybe to add one thing, because in all cases, the refusal of national governments to reply to our questions was justified with reference to national security. But that, of course, is nonsense. The abuse of spyware has nothing to do with national security. The problem here is that even the European Commission wrote a letter to some of the countries where there were concerns, saying, dear governments, we remind you of the fact that although national security is a strict national competence, it doesn't mean a kind of general carve-out from EU law and treaties and EU standards. But they're nothing. I mean, you'd expect the European Commission, if it considers that those countries or those governments are going, are overstepping their powers, are abusing the reference to national security, you'd expect the European Commission to act. But this is where there's a problem. One of the questions I ask myself all the time is the European Union equipped to deal with this kind of problems? And the answer is no. Because the European Commission in intergovernmental Europe is showing nothing but deference to national governments, and it's working on the presumption of compliance of governments, which doesn't work, because and they say to the victims, to the targets, well, you have to go to your national authority and file a complaint. But if it's the national authorities spying on you, then what good is it to go to the national authorities? Because as I reminded people yesterday, not in one single case of European targets, not in one single case has justice been done so far. Not one. So what's the point in going to national authorities? And then another thing, the United States have taken an initiative for a kind of general prohibition on the purchase of commercial spyware. Now, okay, the United States have the capacity to make their own spyware, but still. I understand that there are 10 to 12 member states who have signed up to this. I don't know which ones they are. But isn't it strange that they refuse to cooperate with the European Parliament, elected by the European citizens? Complete refusal, even though some were more polite and friendly than others, but it was a refusal. And then they say, yeah, but we're going to work with the United States. There's been not any public debate, no debate in the Council. I mean, I find this the world's upside down.
Please.
Thank you. My name is Borna Bodnar from Hungary for Club Radio. Could you elaborate a bit on my country? So what was the experience when you visited, and did you get any meaningful answers from the government or from other companies? I don't know. What was your impression, and was there a conclusion?
Well, like I said, with the case of Hungary, we had no interactions with the official government as such. Minister Varga, even though we asked her again and again, refused to meet with us. But like I said, also in introduction, thanks to many other people, investigative journalists, lawyers, civil society organizations, we have received a lot of information about Hungary, and of course also in Hungary there was the investigation of the Data Protection Authority. Now, I think our conclusion is that if you listen to the Data Protection Authority, they will say we investigated this number of cases, about 200, and they all took place within the legal framework of Hungary. But then, of course, you have to question whether this is also real legal use of the spyware, because I think, and this is also what we said at the press conference in Budapest, I find it hard to envisage a scenario where 200 people are being spied upon with very invasive spyware, that the main thing they have in common is that they are somewhat undesirable to the government, or they scrutinize the government, or they're critical of the government, but that this all is necessary because of national security. Also because none of these people, and we've met several of them, are the subject of judicial inquiries or judicial proceedings in the country itself. So what we see is that there is apparently a legal framework in Hungary under the notion of national security in Hungary that does not abide in any way by the fundamental rights and the treaties that we have in the European Union. And this is exactly, I think, where I agree also with Sophie in 't Veld, that yes, the treaties say that national security is a matter of the member states, but this can never be a carte blanche to do whatever you want under the pretext of invoking national security. We have rules in the European Union, we have rights as citizens, and the European Union and the European Commission, as a guardian of the treaties, needs to make sure that those rights are protected in the whole of the European Union, including in Hungary.
We have a few questions online. Shall we, or do you want to? So, please, Maria Sarah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, thanks for the floor. Maria Psara with Efemerida EFSIN in Greece. I have two questions. The first one is for the rapporteur. The report says that spyware use does not seem to be part of an integral authoritarian strategy, but rather a tool used on an ad hoc basis for political and financial gains. My question is, by whom is used this tool? Because in the report we can read about persons that belong to the close circle of the Prime Minister. So I would like to ask a direct question. Do you see any link between the use of the spyware and the Greek Prime Minister himself? And the second question for the chair. Your colleagues from EPP didn't support the report on Greece. How would you comment this attitude, and what is your opinion on the report on Greece? Thank you.
Okay, well, look, it's like for all the other cases, and as I said to your Cypriot colleague as well, do we have a smoking gun anywhere? No. But you know, I can speculate for a long time about what the role might have been of the Prime Minister. The only thing we know for fact is that since his government took office, the law was changed and put the EYP, the Secret Services, under the responsibility, the direct responsibility of the Prime Minister. So, you know, either he knew, in which case we have a very serious problem, or he didn't know, but he should have known, which is also a serious problem. Because we see that there are several cases where people who have been targeted with spyware were usually in alternation, were also put under surveillance by the EYP. How many people have the possibility to ask or to request for a person to be put under surveillance by the EYP? Very few people. Very few. I mean, you cannot just sort of walk into the office of the prosecutor who is doing the authorizations for surveillance and say, look, I have person XYZ and I want EYP to keep an eye on them. There's a handful of people who can do that. And there's a reason why, you know, the oversight over a Secret Service is put under the Prime Minister. So, you know, what he knew, I don't know. I cannot say. What I do know is that if you put the EYP under your direct responsibility, then it's your responsibility. And I would also expect something else. Let's say that the whole thing went wrong this was all not in sight of the Prime Minister. Then I wonder, why is the government not squarely behind the investigation done by ADAE and the DPA? Why are they not protecting them? Why are they not giving them all the means, rather than changing the law, which is actually curtailing the powers of the ADAE? It just doesn't look good, you know? It's not good enough to say, oh, but you're only speculating, oh, it's only politically motivated, and all the other things which people have thrown at me. I think there is a lot of evidence which, incidentally, has been brought to light, indeed, by very diligent and outstanding journalists. But we also know that ADAE and the DPA have also found a lot of material, and I suspect that at some point they will publish their findings. But I cannot say that, that they get a lot of support from the government. So if I were in his shoes, then this is the first thing I would do, is support their investigation and give full clarity about what happened.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Of course, you know, yesterday we voted on 240 pages of reports and recommendations, and I think on 99% we have a full agreement on what to do and how to vote. Now, of course, on this 1%, which deals mainly with Greece, there has been a difference of opinion. I don't want to go into too much detail here because I think it would take away the main importance of the report that we adopted with a huge majority in the committee yesterday, and that we will take to the plenary, where we'll also get a huge majority, because something needs to change. I think the main difference of approach between the EPP and the other groups is particularly resolving what Sophie called the smoking gun. You know, of course, we have countries in the European Union where we have definitive proof, in Poland, in Hungary, etc. In Greece, and also related to the first question on Cyprus, there is a lot of journalistic reports, there is a lot of allegations, there is a lot of circumstantial information, but the smoking gun, as the rapporteur said herself, is not quite there. And then you have a choice in approach, how determinate conclusions you connect to all the findings that are there and which are very well written and framed in the report. And I think specifically on the conclusions that are connected to the findings on Greece, the EPP believed that this was not necessarily in balance with the findings. But once again, this is not only about Greece. We've said from the beginning of our work in the PEGA committee that this is also not only about Hungary, it's not about Poland, this is about the European Union as a whole. We have to take our responsibility as a European Parliament to make sure that we do whatever we can to make sure that abuse of spyware disappears from the European Union in all countries. And there we have a huge assignment ahead of us. We will take a lot of, we need a lot of energy and fighting spirit in order to get any kind of meaningful change through the Commission and the Council. I would really like to focus on that task ahead.
We still have 3 questions online, so since we are running out of time, I will ask these journalists to please pose their questions consecutively, and then you try to reply. Victor, please go ahead. Please, Victor, you have to press the speaker button.
Sorry.
Go ahead. There seems to be some connection.
There's actually 2 questions.
Yeah,
on the,
no,
on
but
the role
please,
of...
we have 2 people waiting. Can you limit it to 1, please?
Okay, so on the role of third countries, the report includes several media informations that point directly to the role of Morocco, as well in the case of spying the Spanish government. So I would like to know if this means that for the community is somehow assuming that Morocco is behind this specific case, and if we can see this report can lead to some consequences to countries like Morocco.
Thank you. Maciek?
Hi, thank you very much. I'd like to focus on Poland. If I may ask you both, because you said something in the report, of course, that there's a special system built in Poland to keep government in power. Could you please tell something more? What's the system? Because it's really dark. And you're asking the European Commission to build a special task force to protect European elections. So are you afraid that the next elections in Poland could be unfair, or could you please say something more about the special task force? Thank you.
And finally, Douglas.
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Last year, Didier Reynders said that he wouldn't hesitate to bring infringement proceedings against member states if their own reports into the use of spyware kind of fell short of standards of independence. Do you think that's still a possibility, and do you think that's an appropriate response?
I'm not sure they could catch it. Yes, you did. So please go ahead and reply as you see fit.
On the last question, I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, but I think it was about infringement proceedings and whether they should be used. But I think it's clear if there is a case of member states infringing upon the acquis of the European Union, yes, of course, infringement procedures have to be undertaken by the Commission, and it's one of the tools that the European Commission actually has, and I think I speak on behalf of the majority of our committee that we've been disappointed about the approach of the European Commission in this. Also from the beginning, the first statements of the Commission that I remember well was, this is about the national member states, it's about national security. Like Sophie explained, victims can address themselves to the procedures in the member states, which doesn't make sense in this case. So yes, infringement procedures, definitely. On Poland, when we were there, and we spoke to a lot of people in Poland, unfortunately not with the government, but a lot of people, and we very clearly identified the fact that the abuse of spyware in Poland is not a situation on itself. It is part of a wider approach in Poland to abolish any kind of meaningful checks and balances, any kind of democratic scrutiny, any kind of control of the budget. We've spoken to the Supreme Audit Office, which is still only roughly halfly filled with auditors because the Parliament refuses to appoint any new ones. It is part of a wider approach to silence any kind of dissent in Poland, and it's extremely concerning. And if you are in a situation where the leader of the campaign of the opposition can be targeted with invasive spyware without any consequences, yes, that begs the question whether or not free and fair elections can be held in such a context. And therefore, I think whatever we can do from the European Parliament to ensure that these elections are free and fair, we have to do. And then on Morocco, I think what was very important in the report, and this is also why it's such a comprehensive and elaborate report, is that we write down all the information that we received, that we gathered during 14 months of investigations. And many informations also point to a role of Morocco. Again here, do we have a smoking gun? Do we have hard evidence what Morocco did and how? Maybe not. But there is a lot of information that is valuable to share, and there is a lot of reason to also carefully look at the role of Morocco in this whole context.
Yes, also on Morocco, because as I understand, both in France and Spain, which may have been targeted by the Moroccan authorities, a judicial or magisterial inquiry had been launched, and very little has been heard of it since. And you get the impression that, let's say, diplomatic considerations are beginning to play a role here. On Poland, I think we've actually written in so many words that it's let's say the elimination of the safeguards and the building of a system in which spyware is just one tool in the toolkit, but it's been done very methodically in Poland. I'm not going to bore you with the details, you can read it in the report, but yes, it's been done very methodically. Am I worried about the integrity of elections? Yes, I'm worried about the integrity of elections in several of the member states, which we have described extensively and that are having elections this year. And I think the clouds have to be lifted. They have to be lifted. If those governments consider that everything was fine and legal and legitimate, then they have to be transparent and open about it and make sure that no question mark is left. Because the thing is, can we prove that elections have been manipulated? No, you can never prove it. But there shouldn't be any doubt. There shouldn't be any doubt. That is already, it's like, you know, gangrene eating its way through democracy. Finally, on the infringement proceedings, yes, of course. I already mentioned the issue of the dual use regulation. It is unacceptable how the European Commission pretends that nothing is happening and actually seems to suggest that if they consider that, for example, the export license to Sudan was not in line with the regulation, that somebody should go to court. This is the job of the Commission. And there are several EU laws that are impacted, the dual use regulation, the e-privacy directive, the GDPR and several others, not to mention Article 2 of the treaties. And yes, the European Commission has already, in a completely different case on the LGBTI rights, has taken Hungary to court using Article 2 as a legal basis. So the Commission does have a responsibility, and it's not taking its responsibility. And the statement that, oh, we're going to wait until the results of the parliamentary inquiry is, frankly, ludicrous.
Unfortunately, we have to finish it now because there are people waiting for another press briefing, which should have started already. Those journalists who have questions, I invite you to please approach the rapporteur and the chair who are still available. I think they can remain here a few minutes outside of the room. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.